Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. We do the MCQs on chapter 3, and first I will run through the worksheet with you all so that you can do it first on your own and then you can look at the answering. So I will first run through without discussing it. Now as we start question 1, discussion of question 1, which of these processes require energy from respiration? Now the two processes are diffusion and osmosis. Now none of these require energy from respiration. You see, now another question could be energy. Diffusion does require energy, the kinetic energy of molecules, but that is not from respiration. Respiration is the release of energy and the process taking place in all living organisms. So in a way, diffusion does require energy, but not the energy from respiration, which is aerobic respiration, which releases energy. So that is why the answer is D, that no energy is required from respiration in diffusion and osmosis. Now, here this is a very interesting question. It says identical pieces of potato are placed in sucrose solutions of different concentrations. After 3 hours, the mass of each potato tissue species measured. Which graph shows the results of this experiment? Now, the first thing you do when you get a graph experiment is you just write some figures. So it says sucrose concentration. So you can just say this is 1%, this is 2%, 3%, 4, or mole dm cube, whatever you want to say. I'm not saying you show on percentage, you can say on anything, but you know that this is say 1%, so this will be say 10%. So the concentration is increasing this way. Now, when you look at the potato piece, inside the concentration must be say it's 2%. It has got some solutes inside the vacuole. So if it is a 1% solution outside, what is going to move in? The mass is going to increase. But then you look at the other spectrum, it's a 4% or a 5%. Then the water is going to move out and the mass is going to decrease. So mass has to first increase. The more mass has to increase. So mass of potato after 3 hours. So say we gave figures here as well. So mass of potato after 3 hours, say original mass was 5 grams. So now it will be 7 grams. And then as the mass will decrease, so it will go down to 4 grams. So original mass was 5 grams, went up to 7 grams, and then went down to 4 grams. So that is why the answer is C. That first of all, there was an increase in mass in the 1% solution. The 1% solution had the mass of potato was more, and then the mass of potato in 5% was less. So mass of the potato after 3 hours. So 5 gram it went up to 7 grams. After in a 10% solution, maybe the mass went from 5 grams to 3 grams. So the mass decreased. So that is why this is the graph. You see, these graphs are all sort of wrong. Why? Because they increase and then they decrease, and then there's more of a, and this of course was less in the beginning and then it has increased. So this one is wrong as well. This one is wrong as well, and the answer is C. But you must know why the answer is C. So mass of the potato after 3 hours. So imagine the mass was 5 gram and after 3 hours the mass is now 6 grams or 7 grams. Or after 3 hours from 5 gram it has gone down to 2 grams. So this is how you have to explain this to yourself, and you've got to write some figures on this. So mass, say 1 gram, 2 gram, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 grams. And imagine that the original mass was 5 grams. Anything to make yourself comprehend this question. That is the art of doing MCQs. Now coming to question number 3, 4 identical pieces of potato are treated in 2 stages as shown. Which piece of potato will be largest after 2 hours? So piece of potato, and which will have increased in size the most. Now boiled in water for 10 minutes. Now why are they asking you this question? You see, if you boil a piece of potato, the cell membrane which contains proteins has been now denatured, so the proteins no longer are going to work. So the structure of the cell membrane is lost. But we have to think of the unboiled one, because that is going to allow osmosis to take place. Now, one is placed in 10% salt solution. So if you have a 10% salt solution outside, that's a very concentrated solution, water is going to move out. So it is going to shrink. So the potato, which was originally this size, maybe goes down to this size now, right? For 2 hours. And if it's placed in distilled water, then of course this piece of potato, which was placed in distilled water, is going to have more free water molecules, because distilled water has the highest water potential. So water is going to move in, and this potato is going to increase largest after 2 hours. So that is why the answer is D. Then coming to question number 4. The mass of a cube of fresh potato is found. It is then placed in a test tube containing a dilute solution of sucrose. After an hour, its mass has increased. Which process has occurred, and what has happened to the concentration of the sucrose in the solution in the test tube? So you had fresh potato placed in a test tube containing a dilute solution of sucrose. So say a 0.5% sucrose solution. Right? Now the mass has increased. So what has happened? The water has gone in. That is why they've told you that the mass of the potato has increased. So this from 0.5%, water has moved out. So the water molecules, so now it has less water molecules. So what will happen to the concentration of it? The concentration of it will increase. So the process is osmosis, and the concentration of the sucrose will increase. Why will it increase? It's just like you have in a glass of water, you have 5 teaspoons of sugar in it, and then you remove just the water out of it. So now the 5 teaspoons of sugar are in half a glass of water. So from 0.5% is probably gone up to 1%, because the water molecules have moved into the potato. So the concentration will increase and the rate will be osmosis, and the answer would be D. Now coming to question number 5. The diagram shows some cells in the root of a plant that is absorbing water from the soil. So the water is here in the soil, and the water enters this root hair cell. So cell 1 will have a higher water potential as compared to cell 2. Why? Because water has entered the root hair cell and then it is going to move into 2. So 1 has a higher water potential than 2. And then the water is going to move from 2 to 3. Why is it going to move to 3? Because this will have a lower water potential. So 1. So now it says, how does the water potential of the cell marked 2? So we're talking of this cell differ from the water potentials of the cell marked 1 and 3. So cell 2 cannot be higher than cell 1. So both of these are wrong. This is how you first cross out the ones which are wrong. Now you have a choice between C and D. So it is lower than cell 1. Yes, these are both correct. So lower than cell 1. Now one of these is correct. But higher than cell C. Why it has to be higher than cell C? Because then water is going to move from cell 2 to cell 3. So that is why the answer is C. Then this is D is wrong because lower than cell 1 and lower than cell C. The normal route is that the root hair cell 1 absorbs water, then it will go into 2, and then from 2 it will go into 3. So that is why it has to be lower than cell 1 and higher than cell 3. Now coming to question number 6, the roots of a plant are placed in a dilute solution containing chloride and nitrate ions. The graph shows how the rate of uptake of chloride and nitrate ions by the roots of the plant varies with oxygen concentration. Now if the oxygen concentration it changes, so I put in figures 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and I put in figures here rate of ion uptake. Now the interesting thing is that the chloride ions rate of uptake remains 2.5. Even though we keep on increasing the oxygen concentration, no matter, the rate of ion uptake remains constant. So that means chloride ions have to be by diffusion because oxygen concentration is going to affect the ones which are responsible in which aerobic respiration takes place and energy is released. So if oxygen is not affecting it, that means it has to be diffusion because this does not require any energy from respiration. Now the nitrate ions increase. Very interesting to see this and understand. Nitrate ions increase till this level when the concentration say is about 3 something. But then the important thing to understand is that the nitrate rate becomes constant. Now why is that happening? Because you've got to understand in a cell there are these channel proteins. And say a cell has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 channel proteins, just like a room has 6 doors. So 6. Now, even though the oxygen concentration keeps on increasing, but then they have to be pumped in. It has to be by active transport. So the number of channel proteins is going to be the limiting factor. That is why the rate has become constant, even though we are increasing the oxygen concentration, but that is not having any more effect. More aerobic respiration is bringing more ATP, but the fact that the rate has become constant is because the channel proteins are the limiting force. Like this, for instance, in a cinema hall, there are 6 doors, so 6 people can enter at one moment in time. So what can be concluded about how chloride and nitrate ions enter the roots? Well, we know chloride ion is diffusion, so the answer is between C and D, and because nitrate is by active transport, because as we increase the oxygen concentration, the rate is also increasing. You can see this, the rate is increasing. So if that is the case, then it has to be active transport. That is why the answer is C, that active transport nitrate ions and diffusion chloride ions. Question number 7. Plant cells are placed in a solution with a lower water potential than that of the cells. Which row is correct? So plant cells are placed in a solution with a lower water potential. So outside it is 4%, solution lower than that of the cell. Inside it is 2%. So movement of water by osmosis, the water is going to move out. Volume of the vacuole is going to become decreased. So that is why the answer is C, because when the water moves out, the volume of the vacuole is going to decrease. That is the main structure, and that's what results in finally plasmolysis and the cell becomes flaccid. Now question number 8, which diagram illustrates the process of active transport? Active transport is low to high. So in everyone, just look at the arrow and the molecule. So here you can see there is one of this. And inside the cell there are 6 of these black dots. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 1 to 6. So this has to be active transport. But let's look at the others as well, because I want you to be clear. Why was B wrong? Because they're showing these ones. So there are 7 of these. When you look at it, these are 7 of these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And outside they are 1, 2, 3, 4. So 7 inside and 4, and the direction is like this, so it's high to low concentration. Similarly in D, there are 7 of these molecules which they are showing, and there are 3 here. Similarly, in this one, there are 9 inside, and then the arrow, what they're saying is there are 15 here, and the arrow is from 15 to 9. So this is how you had to really figure this out. Why was A right and B, C, and D were wrong? So how many of the molecules are outside? The direction of the arrow you had to see. You had to see what is the direction of the arrow that was this way. Here the direction of the arrow was like this. Here the direction of the arrow, as you can see, is I'll just rub it off so you can see it. So it was in this direction. Then question number 9, which statement is always correct when oxygen is diffusing out of a plant cell? So if it is out of a plant cell, inside the concentration has to be higher inside the cell than outside. So that is why the answer was C. The other are all wrong. Question 10, the diagram presents the passage of water molecules and glucose molecules across a partially permeable cell membrane. Which arrow indicates osmosis? Why we've got to see is because these are the water molecules. So water molecules have to go from where they are in a higher concentration to where they are in a lower concentration. So the answer was A. But why is the answer A? Why is B wrong? B is, of course, they're showing the arrow of glucose. And here they're showing, you can see here there are fewer water molecules. If I look at these, there are only 1, 2, 3. These are the water molecules. These are 4 and 5. But here there are many more of these. So this arrow is not osmosis, it's wrong. And this again that of glucose. So if you didn't read this, that this was the triangles were the glucose, then you're going to get this wrong. Question 11. The active transport, diffusion, and osmosis are described below. The movement of ions or molecules across the cell membrane against a concentration gradient using energy. So one has to be active transport. So only these can be correct. The movement of ions or molecules from a region of high to a region of low down a concentration gradient. The movement of water molecules from a region of their higher concentration to a region of their lower concentration through. So this has to be 3, has to be osmosis. So naturally we left with this and the answer is C. Which processes are responsible for the uptake of ions from the soil by a plant and the uptake of glucose into the villi of a human? Both are active transport. Uptake of ions is by active transport and uptake of glucose into the alveoli is also active transport. Question 14. The diagram shows 3 plant cells labeled P, Q, and R. The arrow shows the direction of water movement by osmosis. Now here you can see from Q it is going to P. From Q it is also going to R. So Q has a higher water potential than P and R. But then from P it is going to R. So that means P has a higher water potential than R. So this would be the highest, then this would be the middle, and this would be the lowest. Why you've got to understand is because from Q it is going to P and R. So Q has to be a higher water potential than P and R. Then from P it is going to R. So Q would be the highest, P would be the middle, and R would be the lowest. That is why answer is C. Q, P, and R. Question 15. What describes the diffusion of molecules from a region of higher to region of the lower down a concentration gradient? Yes, the answer is A. But then why are B, C, and D wrong? I want you to know that. B is wrong because from a region of their higher to a region of their lower up a concentration gradient. This is the point which is wrong. It is not up a concentration gradient, it is down a concentration gradient. Why is C wrong? Region from lower to higher. Now that is not in diffusion, that's in active transport. So this is wrong here. Again, movement of region of the lower to higher. This is again wrong. This is not in diffusion. It is always higher to lower. Then coming to question number 16. The diagram shows the concentration of magnesium ions in a healthy root hair cell of a plant and in the soil water surrounding it. Concentration of magnesium ions is 5 millimoles per dm cube and concentration of magnesium ions is 3 millimoles per dm cube. So 5 inside the cell here and 3 in the soil outside. For the plant to remain healthy, how will the magnesium ions move into the cell by active transport? Yes, that's the answer. Into the cell by diffusion? No, it can't go from a low to high. Diffusion is high to low. Out of the cell by active transport? No, it's 5 inside, 3 outside. Active transport is from low to high, but it's 5 inside and 3 outside, so that would be wrong. Then out of the cell by diffusion? No, why would it move out by diffusion? It would lose all the ions. Then coming on to question number 17. How do plants absorb nitrate ions by active transport against a concentration gradient using energy? Yes, the answer is A. Now B, why is B wrong? Against a concentration without using energy, this is wrong. It has to use energy from aerobic respiration. Down a concentration gradient, no, it is never. It's against the concentration gradient. So down the concentration gradient is only in diffusion. And in osmosis, it is from a higher water potential to a lower water potential. Now, question number 18. The diagram shows the net movement of water by osmosis between 4 adjacent cells. Which cell has the highest water potential? Now, I have given figures. C is 10. So it is moving to D. Now, D has to be less than that. So it could be 8. But then from D, it is moving to B. So B has to be 6. So it can move from 10 to 6 like this way, and from 8 to 6 like this way. Then from B, it is moving into A. So B 6, this has to be 4. Water potential has to be lesser. And then from 8 also it has to move into A, so it has to be less. So that is why the answer is C in this case, because that would have the highest water potential. Which cell has the highest water potential? And this is how you had to figure it out. Now coming on to question number 19. The small intestine of a person contains a lower concentration of glucose than is present in the blood. The cells of the villi absorb glucose. Which process is absorbed? So these two are wrong. You know this is a syllabus point by active transport against the concentration gradient. Very simple, very easy question. It wasn't very difficult. Which process can only occur through a membrane? Question number 20. Active transport, diffusion, osmosis can only occur. You see, diffusion can also occur across a membrane, like for instance, when you smell perfume, it has entered through the cell membrane of your nasal mucosa. So you have to understand we can only occur through a membrane. So it has to be active transport and osmosis. Diffusion can or may not occur through a membrane. When you put a dye in a solution of in a beaker full of water, the dye diffuses, but there is no membrane involved. That is also diffusion. So this is what you have to understand is can only occur through a membrane. Active transport, the cell membrane has to have a channel protein and the cell have to have mitochondria to generate energy or to release energy from aerobic respiration. Osmosis also has to be across a partially permeable membrane. So that is why the answer to this was C. And this completes the first worksheet, which is on 20 MCQs. And I think that would be enough for now. If any more MCQs you want to do, please leave a comment and I can do another video on that. But I think we've covered quite a few of the topics and I think we don't need any more at the moment. I need to finish the syllabus. So, inshallah, all the best and thank you. Thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you very much.